Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Notice the meeting was properly posted Monday, June 5th of this year. Item number 3 is discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the special meeting held on May 17th. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. I was asked if we could move item 12 up to the top of the list. Does the board have a problem with that?
No.
Okay. Item number 12, discussion, review, and possible action. Action may include, but not limited to, providing additional instruction to staff, receiving documents, and/or making a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners regarding an update from the Director or Designee of the Oklahoma County Juvenile Bureau.
I think I get to give that one off.
How are you, Judge?
Morning.
Judge Davis, presiding judge out at Juvenile. I'm going to do the big picture, non-detail stuff. So if you got any real detailed questions, make sure you ask the people that actually know the answers and not me. Going to start off with kind of a geography lesson. We've got 77 counties in Oklahoma. Only 4 have juvenile bureaus. There's one in El Reno, Canadian County, that has 10 beds. Got one in Lawton, Comanche County, that has 25 beds. Got one in Tulsa County, that has 55 beds. And then you got ours that has 80 beds. So you can see that just by sheer numbers, we're the biggest juvenile bureau in the state of Oklahoma. We have 151 full-time positions right now. About 10%, 20 employees are in administration. The next big group is court services. That has 38 full-time employees. And court services handles both the intake of the young people that are coming into the delinquent system and the probation side of it. So from a judicial standpoint, those are the people that we deal with the most with, because those are the ones that are in there working with the kids on the probation plans. And I want to talk a little bit about intake and probation. Intake, we do have a diversion program that we try to get particularly the younger kids and the kids that don't have the serious crimes into a diversion program so they don't even get court involved. So there's a lot of kids that come through the system that we don't ever even see because they successfully complete their probation and they're over and done with. And so they handle all of those kids that, like I said, aren't even court involved. They also do the kids that then plead guilty, or we call it plead delinquent, because they're not guilty as a child, plead delinquent to a case. And that handles, it really mirrors the adult population. It's 80% male, 20% female. It's unfortunately disproportionately African American. The average age is 15.7, but it runs from 13 up to 18. The day they turn 18, we lose jurisdiction. I told a young man one time that was getting close to that point in time, I said, if you happen to be in detention on your 18th birthday, what do you think happens at midnight? And he said, they wake me up and beat me. I said, well, I hope not. That's not what we do. But they do wake you up, put you in a car, and take you to jail. So, I mean, that's how fast it switched. And unfortunately, we have a lot of them that have to experience that on their 18th birthday. It's unusual that we have those 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds, but we do get them. And like I said, the average age is that 15, 16, 17-year-old age. The average probation supervision is about 5 months. Having done a felony criminal docket, it's total opposite from the adult system. The adult system, the judge has a number of hearings until the defendant either pleads guilty or we go to trial and we get either a guilty or not guilty verdict. So, I mean, it's up until that point in time with the courts very involved. Once you get a guilty verdict, then you sentence them and you never see them again. On the juvenile side, we have 1 or 2 hearings before the delinquent pleads guilty or we have to do a trial, and then we see them often because we supervise the probation. So really the court involvement is after the plea of delinquent. And the underlying goal is totally different. The adult system is punishment, the juvenile system is rehabilitation. And so we measure success if they don't get another case and if they don't end up in the adult system. So, I mean, failure is when we see these kids that have multiple cases or you see them end up in the adult system. Because, so it's really a different measuring tool than the adult system. 84% of the youth under supervision complete their requirements and don't ever come back. So we have a good success rate that we get them and they don't ever burden the adult system down the road. The percentage is up. It used to be in the 70s, but now we're up to 84%. The focus on probation is pretty simple. Get in school, stay in school. live at home, don't live with your girlfriend, then we really look at community service and trying to address their needs. They have the same needs as adults. We've got a lot of mental health issues, as you all know. We've got a lot of substance abuse issues. We've got anger management. So we really look at the counseling and those types of things to try and make them so that they're going to be successful, so they don't become a statistic in the adult system. The detention, so that's, like I said, that's 38 of our employees of the 150. And then the next big employee part of it, the majority, 65% of our employees, 93, run the detention facility. It's a jail. It's a jail for kids under 18. The difference is there's only one person per cell. Food's a lot better than the jail. And our accreditation standings, luckily it's been very well. It operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's like a jail. We don't ever know how many kids are going to be in there. We don't know if there's going to be a fight tonight and we take 10 new kids in. We don't control the number of kids coming in. We have 80 beds. Our average population right now is running 62. All 6 judges before 8 o'clock in the morning, 7 days a week, get an email that has the total daily population, their names, their date of birth, their crimes, everything about them. We watch it really close. If there's any way we can get a kid out of detention, we try to. We know statistically, the longer they stay in detention, the more likely they are that they're going to experience the adult system sometime down the road. So it's in their best interest to keep them out of detention if we can. Similar to the jail, 40% of our population is sitting in the detention facility waiting on a bed at OJA. OJA is what we call our detention kiddie jail and our OJA kiddie prison. And so a lot of our 40% of our kids in detention are waiting for that bed in the equivalent of the adult prison system, the OJA system. And unfortunately, those kids linger there 90, 100 days, 120 days. We see them every 30 days. When it gets over 60, 75 days, we see them every 2 weeks. When it gets to pushing 90 days, we see them weekly. I can tell you all 5 or 6 of our judges, we see these kids a lot. We know these kids. We know where they go to school. We know what they're doing. It's pretty obvious when you have a kid that comes in front of you. It happens about every 6 months, and the mom or dad comes with them, and the first thing the mom or dad says the first time you ever met them, Judge, I'm done. You can have them. I want to terminate my parental rights. They're yours. It doesn't work that way. And your kid just heard you say that. You know what the problems are. I mean, it's and a lot of it we're dealing with is the family situation they're growing up in. And unfortunately, if you can't fix some of that, sometimes it's very hard to fix the child. Detention, they go to school. Oklahoma City Public Schools provides the teachers. They actually go to school in detention. The principal at Emerson. We have a really good arrangement with Emerson. Both the kids that are in the delinquent system or in detention can transition immediately to Emerson when they get out. I don't know the statistics on this, but I would say at least half of the kids that we see are in the alternative schools. They're either in Edmond Boulevard, Assembly Academy, they're in Emerson or Seaworth. A lot of them have struggled in their school, and then ultimately they end up in the delinquent system. Let's talk about a couple of things that we think that we're doing really well. Shockingly, the evidence shows that teenage girls and teenage boys are different, and they learn differently. And the teenage boys, science says that they don't respond to punishment at all. That's why you have some of those TV shows where they jump off ceilings. They have no risk aversion. The punishment doesn't work. What works scientifically, what they say, is rewards. So we're really trying to shift the male side of this to more of a reward system with accountability, because apparently that's what works with these young men. The girls, what really works with them is relationships. They don't really care about punishment and rewards. They care about sitting around a table with other girls and talking. And so we now have a girls' female program, Power Through Choices, done by collaboration with Oklahoma Institute for Child Advocacy. I think we're on our 4th 10-week session, and the girls sit around a table, and it's been very successful. They told us if we can get them there 2 or 3 times, they say the whole 10 times, they like it. And the goal is, quite frankly, on the girls, is to not have them be in the adult system and to not have them have babies when they're under 18. And so a lot of it's self-respect, self-esteem, boundaries. And like I said, it's really working. The program's Power Through Choices. One of the other things we're doing and focusing on is literacy. We now have a tutoring program. That was done by private grant money and private donations. We looked at it, and 40% of the kids on probation are reading at 2 years or less or below their grade level. 19% are reading 5 years below their grade level. We know that if we don't get that reading score up, they're going to become one of the statistics. And so we now have a tutoring program. We're at the third program on that, and 23 kids are in that, and it's helped those kids. And the last thing I want to highlight is the clothing closet. We now have a clothing closet. Judge Parrish, Judge Jacobson, Chris Steele, a bunch of people came together, donated a bunch, and kids now actually work in it, and it's been really successful. Again, trying to do some of these positive things so that we can get to that success. Our goal is to not have them grow up to be in the adult system. And that's kind of the big overview picture of what we do in the numbers, and then introduce Jamie Overstreet, the director. She can certainly answer all your detailed questions. I'm glad to answer your questions on the big picture stuff, but I'll turn it over to Jamie. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I brought with me some staff members today because, as you know, we're not in the building, so it's difficult for you all to ever really get to meet any of the people who are running some of the major functions. And so I wanted to be able to do that today and take this opportunity. I have Kim Holmes, and she is the acting chief of court services, which was my job previously. That is over all of probation and intake. Mr. Reggie Hines, he is over our detention facility, and Hannah Witt, who is over human resources. So I just thought it would be a nice opportunity, since we were invited here, to go ahead and introduce them. Judge Davis talked about a lot of wonderful things and positive things that we highlight. I think the only downer that I want to talk about, and it's brief, is the challenges around our budget. I know that everyone has challenges around their budget, and we're no different. We've remained pretty much flat. We did have a cut last year, and then I think we're going to be about flat this year. The things that we struggle with around that are primarily our funding for our positions in detention. We have 23 vacancies right now, and that's about 34% of our detention officers that actually run the floor. Maybe it doesn't sound like a lot, but in a small facility with a small budget, it's big. And so what we have to look at are what are some of the unintended consequences of this kind of liability around not having fully funded positions in detention. And I think as far as the youth go, which is our number one priority, we don't have enough staff often to be able to take them out and escort them and provide the security for them to attend school. So not only are we doing a disservice to the youth, but it causes us to be out of compliance with our contract with OJA, and I think could put us in a position for a potential lawsuit around constitutional rights. So to me, that's the number one consequence that I believe is the most serious. As far as just making the checkbook work, other consequences that come with that are, a huge turnover rate because there aren't enough officers, so everybody's working doubles and they don't make any money, and so, hey, it's not worth it, so they leave. So it's a constant revolving door. Last fiscal year, all of the detention officer 1 and 2 positions that run the floor, every single one of them was vacated and replaced within that year at least one time. So it's really a revolving door. Unintended consequences that come out of that, 9 weeks to hire and train. Increase in injuries of staff because, they don't have any experience. Another thing is unfunded liabilities around how that creates overtime consequences. And so this year, since May, in May, for the last 10 months, we've got about $52,000 on the books of overtime, just for those detention officers. In this fiscal year, we have already paid out $102,000 for people leaving, and we owed them overtime and annual leave. So we know that that will continue to happen at that rate without being able to hire up and stay above the curve. Now, being able to stay above the curve means you can't keep going into these hiring freezes. So last year, when Director Staffel was there, we didn't hire officers from January until May. We were almost at a 50% vacancy rate because of the threats of budget cuts at the state level that would then trickle down. We ran into the same situation with our budget this year, and we have not hired detention officers since March 1st, hence the vacancies. So I see that as really a tremendous challenge, and we're looking at the ways that we can address that to some extent. The other thing that I want to bring up is our reaccreditation process with the American Correctional Association. That occurs every 3 years, and it occurs twice. It occurs once for the detention facility, that's one group, and once for court services, which is everything that happens in court, probation, and intake. So they're two separate audits. The probation group got 100% this past year. In fact, for about the last 15 years that these audits have been occurring for Oklahoma County, the last 9-year audit cycles for both groups have resulted in 100% compliance, and we should all be very, very proud of that. We did ask for funding to help defray part of the audit expenses that we will incur this year, and we didn't receive it. So the judge and I have talked about it, and with the situation in the staffing and certainly with the audit, I think we plan to ask for a supplemental, so we wouldn't be doing our due diligence if we didn't at least ask for that. But we do have a lot of positive things going on. The staff that are there are great, and we're a really good team. And I wanted to give just a short minute to Mr. Reggie Hines so that you could meet him and let him talk just briefly about detention. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Do you have any questions?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. I guess I can just ditto what the judge and Ms. Overstreet said and probably sit down. The detention center, as they were said earlier, is the largest detention center in the state of Oklahoma. That with it being the largest detention center, it requires a lot more manpower to run a detention center that particular size. And so one of the issues that we have is that we get a lot of, not a lot, but we get a percentage of kids that have mental health issues. And when we get those type of kids require a lot more services and a lot more attention than what I would say the other kids do that come in that don't require those services. And one other thing with those type of juveniles when they come in is that they tend to stay longer because OJA does not have a readily available place to put those kids in. So the staff spend a lot of time dealing with those type of juveniles, and that sometimes take away the services from the other kids because you're spending a lot more time with the ones that have the mental health concerns. And so that's something that we really need to take a look at is there needs to be more services for those type of juveniles when they come into the system. Some of the things that we have been working on is we want to reduce staff injuries. And so some things we have done is we went to a new way to deal with the kids called therapeutic options. And so that calls for a lot more time being spent to diffuse situations. And right now that seems to be working. We have reduced some of the injuries, and I guess I shouldn't say that because something happened on that piece of it. But that process seems to be working, that we are reducing some of the injuries for staff in dealing with the kids, because we get some of them in there that have a lot of anger in them and they react violently sometimes. Along with that, we have started a program called Cage Your Rage, and that program is a cognitive behavior program that works with the juveniles to give them some other alternatives instead of acting out violently. It could be something simple as writing in your journal as to why you're angry with someone, and that program seems to be working right now. And another thing that we're working with is we're trying to get the staff more involved in being leaders. And so we're inviting some outside speakers to come in and talk to the staff about leadership and giving them some ideas on some things to do regarding leadership. And that's all I have, unless you all have some questions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi,
How are
my name
you?
is fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
My name is Kim Toms, and I'm the acting chief of court services right now. And they've pretty much covered everything, but I do have our annual report from last year that I'd like to give each of you a copy.
Okay.
It has all the other additions and accomplishments that we've had this past year as well.
Thank you.
That's all we have. Next time, if I assume you all are going to have me on the agenda all the time. I thought I'd bring about 15 staff. Would that be okay? Are there any questions? And I appreciate the opportunity for you to let us tell you about what we do.
Yeah, I have.
Go ahead.
I have a couple, Jamie. They're fairly general questions, but obviously you're having funding difficulties with the state. About how much is that approximately? 30%, 40% from previous levels, as far as them undercutting your previous budgets?
Well, when I talked about our budget being cut, I was talking about the county reducing our
Is
budget.
the state still meeting their funding requirements?
The state is not paying the 85%, if that's your question, per statute. They have not lowered our per diem. We received their contract for this coming year, and it's the same per diem rate. However, I believe that the issue is going to be around how do you want to measure your per diem and what constitutes 85% versus the 15% per statute that the county's responsible for. We've had discussions about that. We don't understand why of all the counties that they contract with that we have the lowest per diem rate. Judge Davis has begun to ask some questions in that regard, and we've spent a lot of time calculating per diem. So that's something that we are going to continue to pursue.
And then
But
you...
to answer, the per diem rate has not changed. The state's rate has not gone down.
Right.
I mean, so
Right.
we have not had a cut from the state. That has remained flat. It hasn't gone up, but it hasn't
Right.
gone down.
Can I ask a follow-up then? But Judge, is it fair to say that I think it's 82, is it 8271, something around that number? As Jamie said, that doesn't cover it doesn't cover the 85% that they're statutorily required to pay?
Depends on how you calculate that. Apparently, the way they calculate it does, the way we calculate it may not be. But ours is the lowest per diem rate. It has been. But it's been a flat rate. It's not gone down.
Right.
It's not gone up, not gone down. But they haven't cut us. They did threaten that last year and again this year when OJA thought that their budget was going to be cut. OJA was held harmless both years. And so our per diem has not changed.
So,
81.52.
But when the budget was signed this year by the governor, is it the same amount as it was the previous
Yep.
year? Okay.
Right. So the state rate has not changed for us. Ours is 81.52. Tulsa's is 91.60. El Reno with 10 beds is 98.56, and Lawton has 101.32. I've asked repeatedly, tell me why, and quite frankly, we haven't got an answer yet. But met with Steve Buck and Rachel Holt and Terry Smith, and we're questioning that. But it has not gone down.
Okay. Thank you.
We anticipated it would, but it didn't.
Thank you.
Do you have any other?
yeah, if you don't mind. Last year, at the close of the fiscal year, when Mr. Staple was here, you guys paid out a bunch of comp time. Are we anticipating doing that? And I realize that's as a result of folks having to work contingency time. So are you anticipate having to do that this year?
We're not going to pay that out because we don't see that we have the funding for it. And like he did last year, that was in an effort to try and retain people as he moved forward. We don't feel that we have that funding. But so what I'm talking about is the people that are on board now in those detention officer positions, if they all left today, we would owe them about $52,000 just in their overtime liability. If you look at overall overtime and annual leave time for everyone that leaves, we have paid $102,000 this year, and most of the people that have left are detention officers. So we do not plan to pay them, but we know we will be paying a certain portion of that. And when you reach this level of vacancy and you stay there, you can easily anticipate that kind of liability.
Okay, but going forward, it's 180 days, I think, for those in law enforcement. Is that right? They use their time or you pay them out. Is it the 180?
Yes.
Right. So going forward through the close of this year, you don't anticipate that you're going to have folks that exceed the 180 and therefore we need to pay them and create some additional?
You know, I really think that would be a good problem to have, because what I'm talking about on the overtime liability that I'm talking to you about today are our detention officer 1s and 2s. That turnover rate is so high.
Right. I recognize you're talking about people potentially leaving. I'm asking about those that are currently there. Are we going to get to a situation where we had last year and we suddenly had a claim and we find ourselves in the position of you guys are transferring money or there's some other situation that has to be done to resolve that?
Okay. I don't believe, and I don't know this for sure, but I don't believe that the reason that overtime claim that you're talking about, that the director paid those people off, was all attributable to lapse of 180 days.
So
I think I don't know how much of it, but I never understood it to be connected specifically with that. I thought it was overtime that people had on the books, that instead of just saying, it's going to sit there and we'll try and let you off, but if you leave, we'll have to pay you, he wanted to pay so that he would be able to hang on to those people. Now, some of that time could have been about to lapse. I can't tell you that, but I never understood that to be the primary reason. But, I wasn't there. I wasn't in the discussions, so if that was your understanding, maybe it was.
Well, I was confused the whole time.
Okay.
I'm even more confused now. You've highlighted that you have some budget issues. Have you suspended certain things this year for the remainder of the fiscal year that you anticipate trying to pay for out of next fiscal year's budget? And if so, have you sought guidance on that?
What do you mean by sought guidance?
Well, generally you can't pay for this year's expenses out of next year's budget.
Right, we won't be doing that.
No.
Some of the things that we are looking at to be able to live with our funding, we will start the year by freezing 13 positions, and 10 of those are detention and officers, 3 of them are probation intake officers. We're reducing the computer purchases. We haven't accounted at all for the increase in food price that we requested that we didn't get. We're reducing purchases of safety equipment. We're reducing the use of county vehicles. No one, not that I have any empathy for this, but no one drives a county vehicle home, including the director, and we're limiting the use of those. It sounds like small potatoes, but everything adds up. We're reducing purchases of uniforms. We're trying to figure out how to pay for the audit. But we're doing as much as we can. We're identifying everything we can. Now, those things that we talked about in budget meetings, we couldn't do this or we couldn't do that. We're going to do as much of those that are critical next year out of our M&O money. We're not trying to do something now and pay for it out of next year's money. That's what you asked me.
Well, cell phone stipends suspended, anything like that?
That is the one thing. I forgot about that. Yes.
And so those cell phone stipends have just been suspended for the final whatever?
They were suspended for 2 months.
Okay.
So we will pay them in July. We will pay those employees back.
Okay.
You're right. I forgot about that, Joe.
And then, with regard to the schooling issue that was mentioned, so there are some kids that, this is a completely new animal for me, so there are some kids that receive their school, their classroom work in the facility, and then there are some kids that are going to school?
All kids that are in detention go to school in detention.
Okay.
And we have a school that is operated with Oklahoma City Public School teachers,
Right.
and overseen by the Emerson Alternative School.
And they're coming into the facility similar.
But they're there, they're housed there, they're in jail. And while they're in jail, they're going to school during the day. And
Right,
the school is
just like
in,
those kids that are down at the jail, Oklahoma City Public Schools comes in and they go to class
in the
in the
jail.
facility.
Yes.
Okay. I thought I heard someone say that there are kids that, due to the budget, aren't being taken to school.
Those are the kids in detention, because if we don't have enough officers to pull those kids out.
Okay, so they're not being taken within the facility.
Right.
Okay. And then, what about, I don't know, on the probation side of things, have probation visits been suspended?
We reduced the requirement for home visits and field work the last 2 months of this fiscal year to save fuel. And they have requested, field trips on a case-by-case basis to use the car, which is really just helping with good management. It's requiring them to plan ahead to carpool. If we have a trip to Tishomingo, then everybody that needs to go to Tishomingo goes together. So I don't know that it's actually resulted in any substantial way, the field contacts, but it has helped people plan and force better planning, and which has reduced the use of the cars and reduced the cost of fuel.
Okay. Another question. When you're talking about your staffing, and you're budgeted, or we have a contract for 80 beds. We're averaging, I think the judge said, around 62. So when you're talking about this number of vacancies in staff, is that based upon the 80, so full staffing in that ratio, or are you talking about just the ratio to meet 62, or your fluctuating population? Recognizing that it could go up, like the judge said, there could be a fight, but also recognizing that it could go down substantially. And so when we're talking about we don't have enough DOs, what is the ratio of DO to resident that we're talking about?
Well, first, and I want to confirm this, the master roster, come on up, Reggie, is based on the 62, right?
No,
Based on 80?
It's based on 80, which the contract calls for. What we do is when the beds are not full, then that's the time that we give the officers the comp time that they have accumulated. We give them that time off when we are able to shut down one different unit or something like that. So that helps us with not having the liability for that comp time or that annual leave. So we are able to give them time off when we no longer need that number there.
Okay. All right. And then a couple more if you don't mind, because this is really new to me.
Okay.
In the event we were to reach the 80 number, do we send these juveniles to Canadian County or Lawton or Tulsa, or those that need detention,
Well, when we go over the 80 number, which has not happened since I've been there, but I've done some research on it. When we go over that, then I have to contact the director and let her know that we're going over the 80. We have a couple of cells where we can put additional beds in there, and I think we can probably, from my looking at the research I've done, the fire marshal has approved us in the past, we could go up to at least close to 100 by putting those additional beds.
right? And then you're
That's what really happened.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, and like I said, I know for at least a month, we were running in the 70s.
Right.
And like I said, we were watching it really close. How can we get somebody out? Is there somebody that's low risk that we can get out? Is there somebody that's waiting on OJ placement that we can let them go home? The downside of that is unfortunately, you let them go home and the next day they pick up another crime and they go AWOL. So I mean, but that's what really happens is we start looking at the list.
And I remember those times when there was 100 back when Mr. Hicks was here.
And I've been there 3 years now, and we've never run over 80 since I've been there. like I said, we've been in the 70s.
We've been at 80.
We've been at 80. I know we've been 78, 79, but I mean,
And we're concerned right now with the summer months going on, and the research that we've done, we know that May, June, and July, the account goes up because school is out, and that seems like that's the time that the juveniles tend to get in trouble. So we're already trying to make some contingency plans for those 3 months.
Judge, I'm glad you mentioned OJA again. Made me think, on the adult side, those folks that have been adjudicated, if you will, and are awaiting transfer to the Department of Corrections, there's a rate that we receive. Is it the same in juvenile?
it's the same flat, no, we get the flat rate.
Regardless of whether or not,
Whether we have
so
a kid there or not.
I recognize, or I think I've read that there's a shortage of space in the state system,
Which
but
is why it takes 90, 100 days.
there's also not an incentive for them to necessarily move people along if they're not.
I mean, I on a weekly basis, not a daily basis, but a weekly basis, I get the list of the statewide kids that are waiting for the different beds in OJA, and they run 30, 35 kids on every waiting list, and it takes usually about 9 months to get through an OJA program, so they got to have a kid that leaves before they can bring another kid in.
Yeah, right. And then finally, back to the budget picture. You indicated the county had cut your budget or was flat, et cetera. What's the total budget of the Juvenile Bureau, approximately?
It is 6.7 or 7.704 something.
And of that number, how much of that is county dollars, approximately?
I think that's all county dollars.
Well, given that the way I understand it to work, and maybe Cody or somebody that is on the BET can correct me, you have a contract, we front fund you essentially the money to cover the contract amount that we receive from the state. So that 365 times 80, correct? So it's fair to say that the county is funding up to 50% of the Juvenile Bureau's budget, when in essence it should be 15%?
15% of the cost of detention,
Okay.
not overall.
Well, I would assume that those numbers are probably fairly close when you just break it down.
Yeah, let me grab my per diem.
I mean, is it safe to say that the county is funding in excess of 15% of the detention?
Yes.
Like this, we've got 40% of our employees are not detention during the probation side of it.
Right.
And so that's not paid by OJA at all. So, we've got the two different things. We've got the detention side and then the probation side. The probation side is not funded by OJA at all.
Yes, ma'am, but I would assume that the most costly portion of the operation of the total entity is detention. And I would assume that, given what we've heard, that the county is actually funding in excess of 15%. I could be wrong. I'm not a math major.
How you calculate per diem.
Yes, ma'am. And we're all on the same team. I'm just.
Yeah, I mean, does it include the food? Does it include, what goes into that?
We spent a lot of time working on the per diem rate, and so I think the issue is going to boil down to the argument around how we calculate it. But I'm confident that however that ends at the end of the day, you're definitely paying more than 15%. We calculated it, and I won't go into the details. There's a lot of people here that need to get up. But conservatively, and based on our rate for last year, they have 79 beds of our 80, right, that they pay for. Their money actually only bought 35.9 beds. So even if I'm way off, the answer to your question is yes.
Okay. Is there something that the Board of County Commissioners can do to assist you all as you try to get this per diem rate up and the state to fund what they should be funding according to statute?
Sure, if you want to bring on that part.
Tell us how, I'm sure my boss would be more than willing to try to assist you, Judge. We just don't know what to do.
Obviously, OJA has a new director. the honest answer is, I sent the email September 16th, and my answer came back the end of September 2016. I didn't get a response. So now, 9 months later, we're re-engaging in the next fiscal year, because, like I said, last fiscal year was when OJAB had a fairly flat county budget, and it got cut to $300,000, which we set at that rate this year, and $300,000 was enough that we started questioning the per diem.
Just let us know.
Yeah, so I mean, at least this time, they've said that they're gonna respond to us and meet with us.
Awesome. Thank you, Judge.
Thanks.
Jamie, thank you. That's all.
Anything, Rick?
No,
Nothing, Mr. Buchanan? Oh,
he asked all the good questions. He
Thank
took
you
my
all.
list.
thank you for the time.
Thank you, Jamie.
Do we need a motion to receive
Yeah, we'll
separate
just
from the
receive.
report, or just as part of the report?
Yeah, we have two separate motions. Do I have a motion on item 12 to receive the verbal reports?
So,
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Then I would like to make another motion to receive the handout that we got from the Juvenile Bureau.
so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Both motions carried. Now let's return to item number 4. This will be an update from the BOCC Court Services Department. Grant?
Good morning, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Just two quick items, one to follow up, as I know we discussed last time about streamlining the process to have one judge see our paperwork. I've continued the last week to have meetings with those key players to make sure everybody understands the magnitude of how that can help us and continue to do that. I still have a few more people I'm going to meet with. The hopes and the goal with that is when the Bureau group does have their meeting, and they're having a pretrial committee only, that hopefully that becomes a recommendation that may come to light and happen and help us quite a bit. So that's just kind of what I've been doing this last week or so. And in addition to, just to brag a little bit about our case managers, in the month of May, there were 190 pretrial releases. I went back to October 2010 when I started, and that's been the largest number of pretrial releases. So, which I know, of course, there's some being held and going into the next month. I understand that. However, 190 is a huge month. So that's a huge positive for us.
Hey, Grant, couple, 3 years ago, there was some money set aside to try to do additional electronic monitoring. Have we seen an uptick in that yet? Is it starting to be utilized, and is that part of the Bureau solution as well?
It has been increased, but not, I wouldn't say it's enough of an increase to be noticeable. They are using it more than it was in the beginning, because remember in the beginning it was pretty stagnant. It's starting to be used, but not, I wouldn't say to the point where it would raise an eyebrow to say, all right, well, we're finally starting to utilize it. So I guess no would be an answer to that.
Okay, thank you.
Unfortunately.
How much money's still left in that fund?
It's in the 40,000. So I can get an exact total for you, but it's either high 30, low 40, which we started with 50.
Right.
So.
And the original funding was 50,000.
Yes. That's all I got.
Any more questions?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Grant.
Thank you.
On item 4, do I have a motion to receive the report?
Motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item number 5, get an update from the BOCC Emergency Management Department. David?
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're continuing to move forward in several areas, having some great success actually in several areas that we've been working on. One of greatest significance impacts the entire county is the Emergency Operation Plan rewrite that I've been working on for several months. That actually includes some far-reaching tentacles, if you will, into the operations of a lot of departments embedded within that plan. In order to get us in alignment with the National Response Framework, which is the FEMA, Department of Homeland Security side of emergency operation planning, there are 15 emergency support functions that are identified in there, and we have categorically reviewed each of those, and we have partners in each of those areas. We also have embedded in the EOP multiple other in-house plans, if you will, hazardous weather operations plan, damage assessment plans, mass evacuation plans, debris management plans, communication plans, on and on, things that basically provide guidance to Oklahoma County and many of the municipalities that we partner with and other agencies and entities in how we do business in times of emergency or disaster. It's a significant deal. And hopefully within the next couple of weeks, your offices will be seeing some draft pieces of that for review in regard to operations. Say, for example, at the Highway District, involving the superintendents and debris management and some of those kind of things that you guys are very much involved in. Getting ready to roll some of that out for some preliminary review in multiple areas, and hopefully in hopes of moving this plan forward, we will see that. And that's one of the biggest projects that we have currently going. We continue to work very strongly with Eastern Oklahoma County Fire Chiefs. In fact, today, this afternoon, you're invited to our monthly meeting, first Wednesday of every month. We typically meet at the Nakoma Park Community Center. And there are two groups really in the county that meet, the Metro Fire Chiefs that you may be familiar with, and there's Eastern Oklahoma County Fire Chiefs, which is a ongoing event basically that we host and that we coordinate and have predating me. And we've been very successful in that. There's been some tremendous projects come out of that. We continue to see a tremendous working relationship with them, and participation is going through the roof, and there's a communications function that's now been attached to that in a meeting before our 2 o'clock meeting. And again, you guys would definitely be welcome at those meetings. I'd love to have you come to that, or any of your staff members are welcome. We're also working on annual agreements. Thank you to the District Attorney's Office for moving those through quickly. I've got 17 of those on my desk currently, that many of those will be distributed this afternoon to those departments for signatures, return, and then go back across the Board of County Commissioners. I'm also working on information for a grant request that I'm pursuing through Hazard Mitigation Grant. Same funding pool, if you will, as what you've seen in the Crutcho project, except in this area we're looking at public communications and warning. You're probably familiar with the fiasco we had out in Luther, where 5 used devices that were outdoor warning devices, storm sirens, that were donated to my office by the City of Del City when they changed out their fleet out there, had copper stripped and all that wonderful mess that we got involved in. That legal side of that has been completed. That gentleman that was behind that was found guilty. He is serving term currently, is my understanding, and it's been ordered that when he is released in 3 years, I believe, he will begin paying my office $100 a month restitution. Well, that obviously is not going to work in terms of getting outdoor warning out there, so I'm pursuing grant opportunities, and I'm hoping to leverage this unique situation to encourage funding in that regard. So I'll keep you posted on how that goes, but we're definitely pursuing outdoor warning out in the northeast part of the county, unincorporated areas, and assisting Luther, because we've got population density continues to increase rapidly out there, and we've got some areas that, because of the rural setting, are basically uncovered by any close proximity outdoor warning. So we're working on that project. Our remodel project, thanks to Mr. Monroe and his staff, has lurched forward, I would say. We've seen a tremendous amount of forward progress in recent week. In fact, sheetrockers are down there today. It's looking extremely good. We are seeing some very positive forward movement, and looking forward to that becoming a reality in the very near future. So if you care to come down for a tour, I'd love to tour you through
In this building, or?
Yes, sir.
36?
No, oh no,
Yeah, okay.
no.
Okay.
First floor here,
All right.
down in that hardened area that's being transitioned.
Okay.
And training continues. In fact, we have one of our staff is in an emergency operations center / incident command system interface class today, and we continue to pursue positive training opportunities as they come up and as hours allow. Do y'all have any questions?
Are you aware that ODOT awarded the bid the other day for Deer Creek and the bridge project
I am not.
for the flood mitigation?
Very good.
Mr. Commissioner Bond could brief you on that.
Yes, I would be
So
interested in
that's great
that.
news.
Yes.
It's been a long time coming.
Absolutely. Be interested in that project.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else?
Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Item 5. At the board's pleasure, I'd like to go ahead and go down to item 13, if I may. You guys in agreement?
Sure.
Okay, item 13, discussion and possible action to upgrade the e-justice software currently used by all Oklahoma County departments involved with the criminal justice systems Estimated cost is $362,039.75 to be paid by Telmate. The estimated completion date of the project is approximately 36 months. Rob, would you like to tell us about this situation?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a number of guests here because this is one of these programs that my department help maintains that is very complex, and it involves many different kind of departments. So over the last several months, if not a year, I've been trying to collaborate with them on the best solution moving forward to resolve the issue. Currently, the system would be considered legacy. It is aged, and it is a continual risk to the county. I would call it a house of cards, to be honest. And so I have a number of individuals here to answer your questions if needed. This also affects the OSBI. I have Ann Simons here from the OSBI because they access the system. I'm fortunate to have Sheriff Taylor here and David Bazin and Gary Kenny. They are also use Aegis heavily, including the District Attorney's Office uses Aegis heavily. And I also have our Aegis Administrator here, Rachel Kraft, available for any questions about this. And I'll also have some members from Telmate or from the Caliber Harris Computers is the official name. They've had several name changes over the years. But he's also available to answer any questions about moving forward with an upgrade. And so I would like to open the floor. We're extremely interested in moving this forward. We think it is truly in the best interest of Oklahoma County to proceed and move forward with this upgrade.
I guess one of the questions, and as far as the technical end of it, I know nothing about it, but as far as the estimated cost to be paid by Telmate, how would that work?
In the original contract that the sheriff, actually, matter of fact, I'll have David Bazin come up and speak to that because he has very intimate knowledge of that entire thing from the very beginning. So, Mr. Bazin, if you wouldn't mind coming up, Captain Bazin.
Whenever the inmate phone system was put out for a public bid, one of the vendors, Telmate, which was a successful awardee, they added an extra, it was an extra added benefit, basically, that they added to the contract that would pay for the upgrade of this. They actually use Jail Tracker as which is a component of eJustice. It's part of the records management system in their commissary, their inmates, to track inmates and that sort of stuff. So we already have a portion of that in our office. And those costs they're going to go ahead and take care of the cost of doing the upgrade for us because they see that it's going to benefit them, it's going to benefit us. The problem with eJustice is several years ago, the United States Department of Justice, in an effort to push interoperability, they developed a standard. It's called NIEM, National Information Exchange Model. And that National Information Exchange Model allows all these agencies to share information and to work together. And so, say for instance, the eJustice we use is not NIEM compliant. It's like you said, it's something that was built years ago in the early 90s, and it needs to be replaced.
David, if I could ask a question before I lose my train of thought. So ultimately, would eJustice and Telmate be integrated?
Yes.
So our inmate phones are currently provided by Telmate, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then at one point in time, these two systems will be integrated?
Well, they use information from eJustice. We poured out information currently that they utilize in their inmate population for billing and it's just the way the system works.
and there wouldn't be any upfront cost for the county. This
No.
transition would take place, and
Correct.
what about future upgrades and updates and any maintenance costs? How would that be handled?
I think I need to turn that back over to Rob and let Rob go ahead and explain any future costs.
Okay. David, would you allow Joe to ask a question?
David, before you go, thank you for coming and trying to help us understand. I was looking at the original contract that we did with Telmate,
Right.
and it talks about a $100,000 a year technology grant.
Correct.
Have we received the technology grant for, I guess it would be 2 years
Yes, sir.
under the contract? Okay, so we've received that, so now we're looking at 300,000 going forward.
Correct.
Is the 362 roughly $1,000, is that part of the remainder of the technology grant, or is that separate?
No, sir, that's in addition to.
Okay, and so that leads me to my question. As I was looking at the contract, then there was an attachment, this cost proposal. Do you remember it?
Honestly, I haven't
Well,
seen
anyway, it just says, an upgraded Interact jail management system of $401,000 value at no cost. And then it talks about the $500,000 technology. So it's the 362,
in addition to the
the
500.
401 and the 500, or is the 362 part of this 401?
I think it's part of the 401, but I may be mistaken.
Okay, and you guys currently, as a result of this contract, like you mentioned, or Rob mentioned, have some jail tracker
Yes, we do.
functionality.
That they purchased initially so that they could actually utilize their system with our system.
Okay. All right. And then that helps me some.
Okay, and David Ogle, he can probably explain the back end of this in a lot greater detail than what I can. Okay?
Thanks.
Thank you, David.
So as far as future costs, one thing that it's important for this board to know is we currently are paying approximately $181,000 annually for Oracle licensing, and of which is part of Aegis. And we are permanently attached to that Oracle licensing. We've tried to decouple ourselves over the last several years from using Oracle, particularly as it pertains to financials. So we have slowly tried to unravel ourselves from this relationship that we've had with Oracle, and Aegis is the last bastion. So we have $181,000 per year that we're spending on Oracle simply for highway costs, which should be going away with Aegis, with Munis implementation, and the other one is Aegis. We're paying that annually, and we're using probably 10% of the licensing. And because the Oracle licensing was negotiated several years ago, to try to renegotiate that license now would burden the county even more with more money. So we're really in a tough position. We also pay Aegis currently for the legacy system approximately $260,000 per year. So there will be some future cost after this 36-month period of migration to a newer system. But I anticipate as we migrate to that new system, it's going to free up approximately $450,000 in current expenses for my department. So I do anticipate some future costs, but when we in using it. But when we upgrade, we eventually are going to have no longer have the Oracle at a minimum that $200,000, and then we'll be able to renegotiate with Telmate on whatever future upgrades or modules they might have. And Mr. Ogle would be probably the best person to talk about the specifics on what modules those might be, but the package that they're offering us is a very, very nice package, and it's something that we really need to move forward on as far as for the future of the county and criminal justice here in the way we do business.
I think that's a given. As you know, though, the devil's in the details. And
Sure.
so in reading, I think it was your or Rachel's outline of the proposal or one of the letters here, it talks about this is all free for the life of the contract with Telmate. Is that correct?
Correct, yes, that's the way that it's written in the Telmate contract.
So with regard to future cost, we're looking at, in the event the Board of County Commissioners were to do this, we're looking at 3 free years.
I'll have David Ogle, come up and talk to that, and my understanding, yes, when I say future costs, I'm saying other costs that might be associated with the project overall.
Well, I didn't see anywhere, maybe I missed it, there's no licensing in this contract. Basically, they're saying, here you are, here's the keys, use it for 3 years, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, normally, you're paying a licensing fee like you mentioned with Oracle. So my question is, in the event the county were to switch inmate phone, video visitation, all of that type of service, move away to a different vendor, what's the cost?
The cost for moving to a different vendor would be, you're saying, in the absence of having to pay Oracle?
Well, reading the contract.
Sure.
With Telmate and the proposal, this jail tracker, this update that you want to do, will be paid by Telmate for the life of the contract that we have for them for the service.
Correct.
For being allowed to provide inmate telephone service, inmate communication services, in essence, correct?
Correct.
So I assume that if we were to go away from them as the provider of that service and we went with someone new, would we be switching Aegis systems again, for lack of a better term, or would we want to continue on? And if we want to continue on, what is the cost?
If we want to continue on, it's my understanding that the cost will be, we won't have the Oracle fee. The cost will be for us, would be the SQL licensing at a minimum, I think, would be the SQL licensing to actually run the database. Now, we do have the option to run that database. The current Aegis database is on Oracle. The new one is going to be SQL based, which is wonderful. So we would have the option to either have that be in the cloud with Aegis, or we can host it locally. So there would be some cost associated with that.
But there's no cost for the jail tracker modules that we're getting under this.
It's my understanding.
There wouldn't be any ongoing costs.
It's my understanding that that's covered in.
It's a perpetual license.
That's the way I understand it. There's an additional cost, like if we add a module later, there may be cost, like if it's a new feature that they offer that's not part of this overall system, then there may be a future cost associated with that. But moving from our old system to our new system, it's not going to, there shouldn't be future costs associated with that. And the agreement, as long as they're keeping the Telmate system, the jail tracker system will be at no cost to us.
Right, I understand that part, but sometimes vendors switch. Sometimes things happen. So while it's free for 3 more years, I'm trying to get at, is there a future cost to the county? Are we switching one system, going to another, and in the event we don't have these folks as our provider of telecommunications for the jail, we're going to be spending X amount of dollars because it's no longer free? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes. That would be, and I would say, at an extreme cost to the county, because if we were to no longer have Harris Systems managing Aegis and giving it to us for free, at a minimum we'd be paying what we're paying now, plus. I would guess it would be in the range of almost $1 million to implement a new system. That's based on my conversations with Gary and David and others. And I'll let this gentleman, he looks like he wants to speak to this, so I'll let him come up and say something.
David Otis with Jail Tracker. Questions regarding your the licensing. Since you are an existing Harris customer with Aegis, we have a program that's called Software for Life. So we're transferring the licensing from the existing Aegis system over into Jail Tracker, so you will own that perpetual license for Jail Tracker. So whether you stay with Telmate for the next 3 years or the next 10 years, or you switch somebody else, you still own the Jail Tracker license, so you will not have to switch systems. The agreement with Telmate is to pay the difference in the maintenance, which was an additional $30,000. Your current maintenance on Aegis is about $171,000 a year. which you'd continue to pay for the, jail tracker maintenance fees. But Tailmate's paying for all of the services to get y'all upgraded to jail tracker. The licensing is free, and it is yours. It's your license, perpetual license, so you'll own it forever. So you do not have to switch. If you switch from Tailmate, you will not lose that license. And then Tailmate's agreeing to pay the difference in the maintenance, which is $30-some thousand a year, which equates to that $360-some thousand.
So if we move away from Tailmate, then all we have is an ongoing maintenance cost.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Or, as Rob mentioned, if we want to do additional modules. And from the jail tracker perspective, it will work with any service?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we're 200-plus jails around the country, so a big thing of ours is the integration, as Captain Baston alluded to, with some of the changes that have been made in how corrections is being reported and those integrations, and implementing technologies. A good example would be with Tailmate and their tablets and the use of new technology and helping the county derive some more revenue, as the decrease in the phone commissions from SCC have kind of impacted. But for us to be able to integrate more closely with Tailmate, which we do at other facilities, and being able to automate several more processes that are quite labor intensive right now, things such as grievance and some of the commissary ordering and some of the hardware issues with kiosks, moving those to tablets. So overall, making a more efficient use of resources within inside the jail through the integration with Jail Tracker. Any other questions?
Makes sense. I have a question for Mr. Teal.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. The wording on the agenda, it just needs your help a little bit. It says
Sure.
the estimated completion date of the project is approximately 36 months.
Correct.
It's not going to take 36 months to install the software. You're just talking about the length of the contract. Is that correct?
No, sir. We have a real challenge here at the county, because the way we have Oracle, and we've created what I would consider a highly customized legacy system. And so over the years, the development department from my department, from previous directors, has developed custom programs for almost every department in the county that pertains to criminal justice. So the reason why it's going to take so long is because I have to go to each one of those custom programs, whether it's for the DA, whether it's for the jail, and there's dozens of them. And we have to do a full analysis on that program and also create the exact same program in Jail Tracker. And we have to have a full project plan and user account testing, which means that we have to run them simultaneously until the new one is working and it has all the information from the old system transferred to the new. So I'm going to have my development team will be extraordinarily busy, particularly Rachel Kraft, who's been a great lead on this as far as her knowledge and her participation in that report. So that 36 months is my guys going one program at a time and doing a full analysis of it and replacing it with the new system.
I get it. But Jail Tracker, when the county goes to that, it's just a flip of a switch, right?
Well, we're going to have it up and running very quickly, but as far as it being functional and all the old programs going away and having the county all the way on Jail Tracker, that's the 36 months.
Okay.
But correct, so when we install the new Jail Tracker, it's going to be up and running within a few weeks, maybe 30 days. I don't know what the time frame is for something like that, but that doesn't mean that the county's on Jail Tracker yet. We've got 36 months to go from program to program to untangle us from Aegis, the old Aegis and Oracle, and put us on the new system.
Like unraveling a sweater.
It is actually.
But the sheriff's office, you guys have signed off on this, right? Sheriff and captain? Okay.
And also,
what's the risk? What's the risk?
The risk of not doing it is, like I said, it's a house of cards. We are so wound tightly with this group. We have...
Well, I'm saying, what's the risk of doing it?
The risk of doing it...
Is there any possibility of a system crash? And
There's a possibility of Aegis crashing every day.
Currently?
It's on its last leg.
Okay.
And moving to the new system obviously has some risk, There's obvious chances when you're going from program to program that you've got some development challenges there, and it'll be our responsibility as a department when you're developing to mitigate those risks, program by program.
So you're working side by side with the sheriff's office?
Absolutely, it's imperative.
And somebody's gonna be on call 24/7?
Yes, we have to be. We currently have 20 people on call 24/7 now. Where this would be an enhancement is probably some of the support that Jail Tracker offers. Since we're not on it, we're on an old system, they no longer support our old system. So even if my guys get stuck, we're stuck, but we're stuck internally. We have nowhere else to go.
Right. But the SQL server, is that something the county's paying for, or is Telmate paying for that?
That's an option that we have to consider. Jail Tracker is in the, I might have Mr. Gentleman that was here speak to that, because, we have the option of hosting it internally. We prefer it to be in the cloud, and if it is in the cloud, I believe it's included, as part of the overall package. And that's what I was talking about, there being some small cost associated with that.
Well, I think
on
that
what we
goes to
choose.
Mr. Blau's question.
Mhm.
What's the county's obligation? So there's a possibility that if we host it here on a SQL server, that there's a cost with that, correct?
Correct, yes.
And then there's the DR side of it, correct?
Well, the DR side of it is already baked in because you guys were not.
Built in.
The DR side would be
Okay.
built in. We really would like it to be, one of the challenges also with Aegis information, just so you understand, is that it falls under a special regulatory umbrella called Criminal Justice Information Systems. So they've got some real specific rules on how we manage that information and what could be hosted internally and what could be put externally. So we have to take all those things into consideration. I would say that the cost of the county to spin up a SQL server would be nominal. I would say less than $20,000.
Okay, but again, kind of go back. So we know that we may have some, if we left Telmate, we would have some ongoing maintenance costs associated with Jail Tracker going forward, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Rick's question. We host internally, we have to buy the SQL server, and there's some costs associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
If we host in the cloud, right, they do it for us.
Yes.
I would assume that that's not considered maintenance, and there's a yearly cost for hosting in the cloud. What would approximately, I mean?
That would have to be determined, based on number of users, bandwidth, that type of stuff, to be able to come up with a very accurate number. I would be afraid to even supply a guess.
Okay, you said you were in 200 jails across the country. A facility that is similar size to us today, what is the charge?
Well, we host, the largest, agency that we host is the Vermont Department of Corrections. And of course, they are, considerably larger, than you. They pay about $10,000 a month in hosting, and that covers all their servers, disaster recovery, all the server licensing, everything. So I would expect some, considerable percentage less than that.
Sure.
But it basically all comes down to a number of concurrent users having on and that cost of that bandwidth.
Okay, yes. So there's a cost, an additional cost going forward. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
We share Aegis internally with DA, public defender, judges, right?
Yes, but it's also external as well. Every criminal justice department that's in Oklahoma actually would like to access our Aegis information, and the way they're doing it now is very rudimentary. And I may have David or someone else come up and talk about the way we're doing dispositions. We're the only county out of every county in Oklahoma that doesn't report dispositions the way that we should, because we're using this legacy system. And it's costing all of these organizations, I wouldn't say costing them, but it's actually a burden on all these other organizations on the way we're currently doing it. The OSBI uses it, which is why they're here. The Secret Service uses it. The FBI uses it. And the way they're having to get to our information, because it's so old, is it's a huge burden on them. And it's cost them a lot of money as far as man hours and time. And there's also grants, there's been money pouring into this thing trying to get our dispositions out, and they can't because of the old system.
Do we share this system with other law enforcement agencies?
The
other
information.
people tap into the
Yes.
Oklahoma County's Aegis.
The information.
So FBI, Secret Service, OSBI, and other people are struggling with those agencies as well?
Absolutely. And I'll let David Basin come up and talk a little bit about that because he's on the District Attorney's Council. This is a really important point because it's important that you guys understand how many different folks this is affecting.
All right, Rob, before David, can we follow up on some Aegis stuff?
Sure.
For a second. In your project scope that you or Rachel or someone did, you talk about Aegis and perhaps the potential loss of data, and you're unsure whether it could be brought back up on a new server or a different server. Is that right?
Correct.
My question to you is, have you guys attempted to do that? And if not, why? Is there a risk because you're backing up data nightly?
The risk is unbelievable. Because the servers are sitting on 8-year-old equipment and it's Oracle, we only have 2 of these servers and they're 8 years old. And because the way that the Oracle is installed on them, we would have to find the exact same version of Oracle and an 8-year-old server with all the same drivers on it to be able to successfully recover Aegis. We've looked on eBay. We've tried looking in every computer salvage website that we can find, but we would have to duplicate the 8-year-old system we have now in order to restore it because we've let it go too long. And this is what happens is that it's a terrible thing. When you allow a system to go this long, the costs to the business or the county in this essence, when you allow it, it just starts growing every year. It's putting exponents on it. And we waited so long on this. For us to try to go back and redo it would be a significant cost to the county. And we're really stuck. If Aegis was to fail today, we would be in a terrible, terrible situation for criminal justice in this county and everyone that uses it because the ability for us to recover it is very, very small. It would be considered almost like a catastrophic event. And that's the truth. And I'll let you speak to the different agencies.
Yeah, right now, all these other agencies are having to either portal into Aegis through web services or and the way the Department of Justice does it now, the way they should be doing it in the future is through the National Data Exchange. National Data Exchange was developed for law enforcement agencies across the United States to have one, it's like Google for cops. You put a guy's name in, his date of birth, and it shows you everything he's done across the whole United States, whether he was a victim of a lawnmower theft in Los Angeles or he was a suspect in a robbery in Chicago or he got a traffic ticket in Broken Arrow. It's supposed to pull all this information together. Currently, the system we have is not capable of doing that. It's not NEAM compliant, and we've got to be NEAM compliant to be able to share information. Agencies all over the state want our information. It's clunky. They can't get to it. It's difficult. I don't know what else.
Some of the agencies that currently use it.
Oh, everybody uses it.
So when we go to the system, I guess my question, I'm trying to rifle shoot here, pardon the phrasing, is how quickly do we comply? Are we waiting the full 36 months or within the first 6 months, bam, we got it? I mean, do we know?
Another thing, I want to point this out real quick. Right now, we're not sharing information, and since we're not sharing information and we're not reporting dispositions to NCIC III, well, handgun licenses, people going for handguns, it'll show the arrest record, but it doesn't show the disposition. I do represent all the sheriffs in the state of Oklahoma on the CJIS task force at the District Attorney's Council, and OSBI has applied for 4 grants now of about $250,000 each. So that's been $1 million going back, and the Department of Justice has manually pulling dispositions for NCIC III so that it can be up to date. And that money could be used elsewhere. And this is something that's going to get us to where we need to be. So UCRs can be, we can do universal crime reporting and we can put those dispositions. Those dispositions will be automatic. We're the only county in the state of Oklahoma that doesn't report dispositions to NCIC III.
Just so you're clear also, in order for us to get to that point where we are reporting, that's the 36 months. So it's not a quick fix. Will we be more NEAMS compliant as we start to unravel some of these other programs? We'll start percentage. I haven't broken down a percentage of total programs and the total amount that they're being used per department to give you like a real quantitative answer. But I will say that as we turn off the old and turn on the new, it'll start moving the ball forward down the football field to get us to where we're at a point. Now, once we've done that and we've transferred all those custom programs, then the district attorney will be in the position to select a case management system of their choice, as long as it integrates with this child tracker. So that puts them in the driver's seat in about 36 months.
Is that an optional piece of equipment they'd have to purchase?
Correct. That would be a cost for them in 36 months for the district attorney if they chose to select the new case management system. And I briefed David Prater and Scott Rowland on their option. Some of the concerns in the past was them not necessarily having options in the 3 years. You know, we're going to be stuck with something we don't like. Well, we're really stuck now because we have no options. And when we get to the point after these 36 months of software migration, then we'll be in a position where they'll have lots of options to be able to pick something that suits them, it suits the district attorney. It'll actually probably reduce their overall cost significantly over time because there's so much manual things that are done now. It's unbelievable. I really want to help them because when you go there, you can see that we're running on an older system, and it's very evident in the way that processes and workflows go through the department. There's a lot of things we can do to bring them up to date that would benefit everybody.
Let me follow up, if you don't mind. I'm simple-minded.
Sure.
So I hear 36 months, I say that's a long time. If we were to get you more staff, could that 36 months shrink to 18
Yes.
or 12?
Correct. So,
how much staff do you need?
Several business analysts and a project manager are something that are an option that would be only needed on a temporary basis for the project. One of the thoughts, because the district attorney's council has said, we really want you to do this, so there may be some money available to us to be able to get some people temporarily to help us move this along. Correct. So that would be at the pleasure of the board and the VOCC to decide if they wanted to add some personnel to this project. We could reduce the time. That in 36 months is based on our current staffing numbers. And then I would be trying my best to get money to bring in a business analyst and some project managers, particularly for a project of this scope. I will tell you that this is no easy task. And in all of my years of doing big projects like this, this is one that I would definitely consider a Mount Everest, but we can do it.
Well,
go ahead.
I would encourage you, if there's a way to shorten that 36 months, to look for a way to do that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you mentioned according to your project proposal, you mentioned phase 3, the district attorney's office selecting a case management system.
Yes.
Correct? Did I understand you correctly that cost would be borne by the DA's office and not the county?
No, I was saying that it would eventually be borne by the county at the end of the 36 months, but they would get the choice on which program they would want to use. And they also Harris has a case management system, so they could use theirs. It's up to them. We're not trying to tell them which one they should use. They're the ones that get to pick.
Okay, but that's an additional cost to the county.
That's correct. But I anticipate at that point that I'll be able to turn off Oracle, which I'm spending
I understand all that, but what I'm trying to get at is this $362,000 in services that is free is not really free once you begin to look at the additional costs, whether it's staff, which we haven't even talked about phase 2. I need you to explain that.
Sure.
And then phase 3. And then there's hosting, non-hosting, should we not contract with Telmate, there's additional maintenance fees, et cetera. And I don't think there's anybody up here, I think I can speak for them, that doesn't agree we need to address the situation. What we need to not do is go in blind in trying to address the situation, go in blind, and then suddenly we're faced with a myriad of other costs that we thought, oh, well, Rob said it was free.
Sure. No, that's a great concern. I will tell you that based on the speed of technology, that I can give you very close estimates on the cost. I could tell you that it will not exceed what we're currently paying with Oracle, which is $180,000 per year. But if I was to try to predict the cost of software in 3 years, I'd be remiss. Now, I can tell you what the cost of an SQL license is now, and we just got some information that we'll probably be paying less than $10,000 a month if we decide to keep it in the cloud. But it's such the amount of cost of the county compared to the risk is there. And we would, just because we're deciding to move forward on this, it is an organic process. Projects are that way. So we would engage the county as we go and try to make sure that we're limiting any cost to the county. And we have this $181,000 that's going to be available to us at the end of this 36 months. So that'll be something we'll have available to us to spend on future costs, which should be, I'll tell you from my experience, that should be more than enough to cover anything that we have to spend on future DA costs.
What is phase 2? It says here in your description, we've not yet received an estimate from Caliber Public Safety for software services for phase 2. What is that? What kind of cost are you looking at there?
The phase, repeat those phases to me. I don't have it in front of me right now. I'll let Rachel come up and talk to this. Come on up, Rachel. She has intimate knowledge of it.
Hi, Rachel.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Phase 2, the project is split into 3 parts. The first part is the jail tracker that we've been speaking about. The second part is a software that also is run by Caliber Public Safety called Online RMS. Right now, Aegis comprises 3 different parts. There's criminal justice, there's law enforcement, and then there's the jail. Jail tracker is for the jail. Online RMS is another piece of that, but it's not the same as jail tracker. And then we have the DA's part in phase 3. So right now we don't have an estimate, or at least at the time I wrote that, there was no estimate for what that might cost for online RMS. There's no cost estimate for what sort of migration costs would be for our current data. But we are talking about dealing within the same company, moving our data from one system that we have to another system that we'll have, and it's the same company, same staff.
So you kind of a wash, almost, when it comes to cost?
I feel like I would be possibly misstating if I was to try and guess at cost. Right. That is outside the scope of my job.
Is it fair to say then that although this is presented as one project with 3 phases, it really could be 3 independent projects, right? The jail tracker, and they feed information and there's information sharing.
It's one project because right now they're all comprised within the same system. To move off of Aegis completely, we have to move to 3 different systems because there are no products out there that combine all 3 functionalities the way that Aegis did at the time it was selected, which is partially why it was selected, is my understanding. That's why these 3 phases are tied together. What they're doing, they're addressing different parts of Aegis in each phase as we migrate off of it, but Aegis wouldn't be able to completely come off until the end of the project.
Right.
Because the DA would still be using parts of Aegis in phase 3. Along the way, we have over 20 custom applications that have been written by the county IT staff over the last 10 years that tie into our Aegis. And we have to go through and we have to make sure that all of those applications will still work, or that their functionality is replaced either by Jail Tracker or Online RMS or whatever software that the DA's office decides to choose.
Okay, Rachel, this is probably for Rob. Sure. Is it fair to say that there are a lot of unknowns to this project going forward beyond the 362?
It is certainly fair to say that.
And so, in order for at least me to make an informed recommendation to my boss, it would seem that I would want to try to identify phase 2 and phase 3. Why couldn't the DA's office and the county be engaged in looking at a case management system now to identify costs? I'm not certain that it's good practice to enter into something when you don't have an idea of the cost. And I understand that they may change, but to go blindly into something, because it's free, well, that's great, but there are costs.
Sure, and that's part of, there certainly will be cost, and as the years go by, we'll be carefully considering those. The cost-benefit or cost-risk analysis is that if we don't move forward and we wait to gather all this information, it's one more day that the house of cards can fall on us. So, not that we're going to be going...
I agree, it could fall on us, but isn't it prudent to try to put together cost estimates for the entire project? You're giving us 1/3. This is 1/3 of the project that you're asking us to address this house of cards with, without being able to give us any kind of estimate as to what the future costs are. I mean, I've been able to get that there's costs going forward on the 360, and this has got nothing to do with not wanting to help. I want to do everything I can to help, and I think that's why it's prudent we try to identify phase 2 costs and phase 3 costs, so that when you go to the board, they know, and ultimately when they have to go to the budget board, what we're getting ourselves into.
Sure. I agree. I'll let Rachel, you want to say something, Rachel?
I just wanted to point out that phase 1, the completion of phase 1 would not actually harm or hinder phase 2 or phase 3. We wouldn't need to continue if there was a cost concern. We could still leave Aegis running, because it will still be running at the end of phase 1.
But I thought Aegis was the principal driver for doing all of this, so why wouldn't we attempt to address it all at once?
Of course we would want to address it. However, the concern here is that we do not want to miss an opportunity to move at least the jail tracker data in phase 1, because we're concerned about phase 2 and phase 3, which are far enough down the road that if we get through phase 1 and the county says we don't have the money to do phase 2 or phase 3, we lose nothing, because the data that was in Aegis for jail tracker is already moved to jail tracker, and its cost is already handled.
But we'd still be paying the licensing cost.
Exactly. There would still be data on Aegis for phase 2 and phase 3.
We've had no cost savings at that point.
Right.
Until we totally get off.
What we do have, though, is DR and recovery, because right now...
For jail track.
For the jail data, yes.
Right. Okay. Good.
Right now we don't.
Right. Okay.
So, correct. Thank you, Rachel.
It's a spider web of stuff, and we're just trying to...
So could we go out today for an RFP for phase 2 and phase 3?
It would be unwise, in my opinion. The reason why is because we want to have jail tracker and that information migrated out, and that's the reason we have it in phases. Because when you get these things going, 2 or 3 things going at once, and you're engaging all these different vendors, as we go through this, it's also a learning process for MIS. So this is something that is, like I said, it's like a Mount Everest. So for us to try jumping into phase 2 and 3 before we finished phase 1 would be a huge tactical error, in my opinion. The reason why is because there's a massive amount of knowledge that will be gained with the migration in the first place, which is one of your biggest costs. So by the time we're done migrating jail tracker, we're going to have a very good picture of future cost, a very good picture. And we'll be able to say, here's what we anticipate for phase 2 and 3. If we go into it now asking about migration, the numbers are going to be all off. We would have a difficult time trying to bid out online on that.
The numbers might be all off, but at least there's some numbers. Right now, we have 0.
I think if I hear Joe correctly, he's just asking for some estimates.
Sure.
And if he could also estimate how long phase 1 would take. Because when BET, Budget Board, Commissioners all have to decide on this funding, it's good to know there's something out there that's coming.
Sure.
Light at a tunnel. Is it a train? Is it a truck? and
Got
go,
it.
what's coming at you? So if there's a way to map that out, I think that would be helpful. It'll
I'll
help us
certainly-
wrap our arms around it.
I'll certainly do that. I will say that the numbers will be very, in my opinion, will probably be really high, because of this migration issue.
Ballpark that.
We can park that?
No, ballpark that. Tell me what that means. Your definition.
I would say 40.
Does Tulsa County use Jail Tracker and have a similar system to what you're talking about?
They all use different systems. Mr. Basin is most familiar with what systems they use.
David, is there some county out there today that has something similar to what it is Rob is proposing, that we could get a picture of cost?
I think you're talking about on the jail tracker?
Phase 2,
On
the
phase
phase 3.
Okay.
This is.
Okay, let me say one thing about phase 3 real quick. Phase 3 would be the district attorney's office.
But it's the county, I heard it's the county that's paying for it.
Okay.
Right?
No, listen to this.
But we're on the same side.
Okay, okay. No, what I'm saying is, let me go ahead and do this. Okay, the District Attorney's Council has an enterprise license for the state of Oklahoma for a product called Justware that all the district attorneys use across the state of Oklahoma.
Okay.
Justware is available to Oklahoma County if Oklahoma County District Attorney's Office chooses to use Justware and the license is already bought. Okay?
So that's
So the
zero
cost would be
potentially.
very minimal, if any. Okay, I can get an exact cost from Jerry George from the District Attorney's Council if you'd like for me to.
No, that's what I'm asking. Just
Yeah.
give me an idea,
Yeah,
because.
That's minimal, but that's not to say that that's what they want to use. They may want to choose a different records management system. I think the important thing that you should consider on this, on what we're trying to do today, is the financial impact if we don't do the jail tracker portion of it, because the jail relies on the information, core EMR, the medical piece of it. It all works together, and this jail tracker will work beautifully with core EMR, but it'll be something, if Aegis crashes today, we're going to be in big trouble. We really will, because liability-wise alone, the cost is going to be huge. So honestly, I think it's something we really should consider, at least doing this first phase, and then looking at something on down the road, as far as the other phases.
And there would be no upfront cost if we went to jail tracker, zero.
I don't believe there's no upfront cost, just their staff's time. But it's just turning on additional modules. We've already got jail tracker. It's already in-house. It's already running. We just need to turn on the additional
But,
modules.
when we set our budgets, we look at, let's say a capital
Right.
outlay, and I'm not aware that we have set any money aside for this project for phase 2 and 3.
Right. Well, phase 2 and phase 3 we need to look at, because the justice needs to go away. It does. Well, David Ogle, let me ask you a quick question. Whenever we do, if we were to move to jail tracker, all of a sudden we're NEAM compliant, correct?
That's correct.
And we can start sharing information out of jail tracker with other agencies across the U.S.
Previous things and moving it to jail tracker, because previous records won't just automatically flip over. That will take time, and that is partially where our challenge lies, is that we do not have staff to do this. At this time, I am the only Aegis person on our MIS staff, and I've been here for a year and some change. Our previous person left, and did not leave much instruction behind her. And my only counterpart would be Gary Kinney, who is a great fellow, and Sean Osment, who is our remote database. And so between the three of us, it would be very difficult to speed the project along, much less migrate things without additional staffing concerns. there's really a hidden cost here that hasn't really, that is a little difficult to quantify. Our help desk engineers and our application staff since, well, Aegis is a continual challenge along with those 20 custom applications that we have that tie into Aegis, and it eats up an inordinate amount of time
Well, would
for
our
us to try.
exposure, if we migrated to the jail tracker, would our exposure, our vulnerability, would it be reduced significantly in Aegis?
It would be reduced, yes.
Significantly?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Right now, we have no data recovery if this happens. At least we would have
I mean, on this item, this board cannot do anything the way, you know, it's written. Obviously, we can't approve anything. I'm just speaking for myself, but money is a key, you know, and for me to make a recommendation to my boss, I would have to have, even though there'd be estimates, have to have some idea, because part of the selling point was we would not have to pay licensing for Aegis, but if we stop at phase one, then we're still gonna be paying for Aegis. So,
Oracle and
okay.
Aegis, yeah.
But anyway, I guess the bottom line, if you estimated, you know, phase one, let's say it's not gonna cost anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, phase two, whatever. Phase three is up to the DA on what they wanna do, but still, you know, there's gotta be some kind of estimates, because as it stands now, if I was talking to my boss, I go, you know, phase one might be great, but now phase two and three, I'm not sure.
Sure.
We could hopefully incur more cost.
I would, obviously you can't take action on it now, but I would request a motion to consider the phase one part of it. I can change the language on it to authorize the implementation of phase one, which would get us 30% closer. And then we can get moving along there as I gather costs for phase two and three. But we're kind of painted into a corner, sir, and
right, and
I wish it wasn't this
Yeah.
way.
And we're just a recommending
what we're
body.
hearing.
You know, Rob,
Yeah.
if it was written differently, as far as to make a recommendation, but what I'm saying is I am on the same team, and I do think we have a problem here. But for me to go to my boss, for me to make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, I, for one, would need a little bit more information, specifically cost information.
That'll be helpful. It's kind of like buying a car with one wheel.
If we can provide that, we have it broken down in phases, so you guys would be able to have a comprehensive view of the scope of this project overall.
Right. That'll be helpful.
And so we can break it down with the online RMS part. Some of this stuff is going to be very approximate. So we may, you know, especially as it pertains to migration and online RMS costs. So we can do our best to approximate, and hopefully that will be enough information for you guys we can move the ball down the road with phase one, and you guys can have a general idea of what the cost might be in 3 years and 2 years. Specifically with the Justware being available at no cost to the district attorney, that was one of the concerns, and so that would be their option at the end. They want to be in control of their own ship, and that's understandable.
Sure.
We would need at least I would request a total package, 1, 2, and 3. What's the ultimate deal? Just to migrate off and have it stand here, you know, on.
Got it.
See what I'm saying?
Well, I think they're separate pieces, but they're all tied together, and that's the issue. Mr. Blau, Mr. Satterwhite, and I are all
to migrate completely off the
you know, give us the whole picture, but we definitely want that one slice of pie.
Definitely.
Makes sense.
Going forward also, another program that I represent through the District Attorney's Council and the Aegis Task Force is the National Criminal History Improvement Program. So there are grant funds. Like I said, OSBI has tapped into it 4 times now for $1 million, over $1 million. And so the funds are there for the state of Oklahoma for criminal history improvement. So I'd be more than happy to apply for funding or whatever we need going forward to make this happen.
You're awesome at getting grants, so.
I can try.
I have a question maybe on the legal side of things. Aaron, this is, if we did phase one, it would occur as a result of our contract with Telmate, and Telmate would be providing payment to the vendor, is the way I kind of, from reading these documents. So my question has to do with the relationship of the county contractually, what liability the county might be exposed to, if we're not entered into a contract yet, some of this data were lost, or this data were released to the public, because there is, I'm assuming, data that would be protected within these records. And so have we even gotten that far down to looking at what that relationship might be, how that would work?
I know the relationship we've had with them would have to continue. Is your question about what the risk would be if there was to be information released?
As I'm looking at this document that you provided, there's a quotation order form from Caliber for the 362, which expired in October of 16. And then you have kind of a quasi-contract here that the only signatures on it are between Telmate and Caliber.
Sure.
So my question has to do with, even though this is being done on behalf of the county, what is the contractual relationship to ensure that the county doesn't have undue liability in the event that this doesn't work correctly, or there is a release of data that shouldn't occur?
That's an excellent question. We have consulted with Telmate's senior counsel, and I would have to re-engage with them to answer that question. As far as the risk of the information being released, I would consider it to be, or something bad happening like Aegis crashing, I would consider it the extreme risk, some of the highest I've seen in risk mitigation. If our criminal justice system was to fail, it would have the potential to crush the county financially based on the lawsuits. It would be significant. I mean, that may not be accurate, but it would be significant, because you wouldn't be able to get to any of your criminal justice records. It's that severe. I mean, it's really, really significant.
Let me ask a question.
Sure.
It's been a very long time since I reviewed the last proposal that you sent to me, and even when this process first started, it went through multiple versions back and forth to me.
Sure.
So my memory is horrible with regard to specifics. My recollection, however, was that even with phase one, it would require the county to enter into a contract with somebody. This wasn't a situation where Telmate was going to directly contract with a vendor on our behalf.
That would be a question for for David Basin or Mr. Oler.
Well, no, I thought you and I had this discussion because my recollection was that there was going to be some component that was available to the county by purchasing off of state contract.
The fact Harris is a state contract company, so that was a concern. Why weren't we taking this to bid? And so that was the question, like, hey, should this be an RFP if we're entering into a new contract? So we provided the information on there that they're already GSA and state contract, so there's not a need for that.
But the contract would be between the county and the vendor. So I think, Joe, to answer your question, a portion of the question, you know, our initial liability issue is going to be dependent on the language of that state contract. And I'm assuming we have the money to encumber the full the cost of that contract.
We pay for Aegis currently, and it was in last year's fiscal year budget, and it is in this year.
But we're going to have to continue paying for Aegis, correct?
Yes.
What I'm asking you is, the law requires the county to encumber the cost of whatever contracts it enters at the time they contract.
Yes.
So if you're contemplating purchasing something off of state contract, you still have to cover the full amount of that contract from your budget. Correct?
Correct.
And you're able to do that?
To my understanding, yes, because we were already doing it.
May I try?
Yes.
Okay. Let's forget about what we're paying for Oracle.
Okay.
Phase one is $362,000.
Mm-hmm.
From listening to Aaron, the contract for phase one would be between the county and Telmate. Is that correct, for the 362?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So you currently today have $362,000 available in your budget to encumber to cover the contract.
No.
Okay, so that gets to the root of my first question. Given that Telmate is paying for the $362,000 for phase one, what is the relationship with the county and how will that work? Will Telmate write the county a check and give us $362,000? In the documents you provided, that doesn't appear as though that was what was going to occur.
It's my understanding that that Telmate would pay Caliber directly for our cost. That's the way I read it. So we have the 362, and instead of us having to pay 362, Telmate would in fact write a check and pay Caliber.
Well, it can't work that way, because unless Telmate is going to directly contract with Caliber, is that the company?
Yes, yes.
Unless they're going to directly contract and leave the county completely out of it. And if they're willing to do that, I would want to see something in writing indicating that they're willing to do that. Because then the county would need to assess, in terms of liability, what they might be on the hook for if there is a breach between two parties that they have no control over.
That was my initial question, Aaron. What risk is there for us if they do this as contemplated?
But if they're not going to do that directly, the contract still has to include the county. And if it does include the county as a party to the contract, we have to encumber the full amount of that contract. So you would have to have the $362 in your budget to cover that cost of the contract, and that locks it down. You can't spend it on other things, and then you would be dependent upon reimbursements by Telmate to, make up what you have encumbered.
Make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
Okay.
The agreement was that Telmate was going to go ahead and pay directly to Jail Tracker.
Right.
But they can't unless they contract directly with Jail Tracker.
Right.
They can't.
Do you have a contract?
If we sign the contract, we're on the hook legally, and the law requires the county to encumber those funds. So we can't just let a third party pay our bill. Right.
We've actually done this in other facilities also. We've done it both ways, where our contracts are with the county, and the payer is just basically Telmate paying the bills to us. In several other counties, it is agreements between Caliber and Telmate, but the licensing still resides with the county.
And what I have never seen submitted to me for legal review is a contract that would accomplish that. If you're going to do a tripartite contract, that may be completely legal, but there's going to have to be terms in it to protect the county in the event that there's a breach. I mean, you can have more than one party to a contract. That's not the problem. But the problem is there's a component here, a legal component, that hasn't been, I'm not sure, determined as to how it's going to work, and hasn't been submitted for legal review to make sure it can be done legally.
What is it? We can start and get down that road immediately. The question is that I want to be sure that we're briefed on how the county would prefer that to look. As far as there's probably 4 or 5 ways they can write up a multi-agreement like that. So we would want some kind of guidance. This isn't our wheelhouse per se when it comes to legal contracts, on if there is a template that already exists or something in that area that we might be able to do that would move the process along a little bit quicker. We'd be happy to do that.
Well, I forget your name. Mr. Ogle, is that correct? I believe I heard him say they've done this type of thing a lot. That may be your resource.
Yes.
However,
and we can provide copies of those.
And I understand, Rob, you're wanting some type of recommendation or some kind of movement forward even on phase one. But as you can see, there are a lot of unknowns that I don't think, at least I can today. If it was as easy as it's free and it's great, I'm all for it because they need the help. The DA's office needs the help. But I don't want to rush in trying to help and inadvertently create problems.
It deserves all the proper due diligence of any other contract that we get in with the county. And that's one of the reasons that I brought it to this board's attention, because it's very complex. There's multiple parties involved. It's very high risk. It includes a lot of my staff's work, and it not just is it a risk for my department, because we're the ones that maintain the system. It involves so many other groups. So this is why I'm bringing it to y'all's attention, so we can hammer through some of this, and I appreciate it, because we're going to do whatever it takes to reduce risk for the county, and I'm perfectly fine with doing all the due diligence that we need to on cost and also on legal contracts.
Well, originally, and that's why I'm kind of like Rick, I'm pretty simple-minded, maybe more so than him. Anyway, originally I said, was there any upfront cost? On 3 occasions they said no, and now we're coming back. There may be the $362, depending on contract, you know, how it's written. So,
well, there's not going to be a cost. The cost would be on the way they're giving it to us for free.
There would be
by the law.
Had to encumber the $362,000.
That's exactly right. So we want to avoid that if possible.
Because even if they give us back the $362, typically the way that works is we front fund that cost out of the current year budget, and that money that comes in through the year is not available for expenditure until the next fiscal year. So there's a cost.
I understand.
Okay, so I would make a motion, number one, that Rob work with Mr. Ogle, Mr. Baisden, whomever he deems necessary in order to present to the district attorney's office for review possible contract options to implement phase 1. And that, once that is done, it be brought back to us for possible consideration, or if you choose not to do that, go straight to the board. So that's a motion with regard to looking to try to find contract options.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion
And then
carried.
I have one final question regarding, this process started way back. Dave, this is for him.
Sure.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate your time.
And as I'm reviewing the document control here, there looks like 4 changes. 1.01, change dates due to project pushback. What exactly is that?
Project pushback, I'm not sure. We've been working on this item for several months. And there's a lot of moving parts, as you can see, and a lot of parties involved. And so we started down the path of wanting to get at least the beginnings of a legal review of whether or not it's legal to accept this money that they want to offer as an upgrade. So, and the contract has existed for so long, it's before my time, and I think it may be even before Ms. Etherington's time here at the county. I'm not sure. So we sent all that stuff up for review again, and we went back and forth for quite some time on resolving trying to figure out to get where we are today. So, Rachel?
As far as the dates go, that refers to changes in the actual dates within the proposal itself. This does not reflect any particular delay. It's just that there are dates in there saying 36 months and giving exact months and year. But since we haven't been able to engage the project yet, the 36 months looks different. What the start and end date does. So that's what that's referring to, and not to any particular other delay or challenge.
Oh, so the word project pushback is not accurate.
That was not in the way it's being interpreted. No, that's not what I meant by it.
A word of art.
Huh?
It's a word of art or a phrase that you use.
Perhaps I could have used different wording, but that it doesn't.
Do what lawyers do and use Latin.
I mean, I take it that pushback isn't pushback, and so yeah, okay.
If it's the board's pleasure, we finished with item 13. Since Rob's up here, why don't we do item 10, which would be his report?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, we did.
Do we need a motion to receive his
Well,
update on
the way
13?
that, going back to item 13, the way it's written, we didn't really receive anything originally before you made your motion to instruct him to, you know, get with the other parties
Okay.
involved. I was just gonna indicate there was no action required on item 13.
Okay.
That, then if we can move from there to item number 10.
Sure.
Okay, Rob.
We're moving along. We've been very busy. As you can see, this Aegis thing is one of many projects that we're working on, along with Tyler Munis, and other projects as well. Disaster recovery implementation. I'm really proud of the folks that I have working with me. We have a great team over there, and we're handling a great deal of help desk calls. And one of the challenges we have in our department is being able to manage all of these things at once, which is something extremely critical like Aegis, something very important and expensive like Munis, and moving that project forward as it pertains to work orders and all the modules we have to implement. And also the fact that we're in the process of implementing all this new DR equipment. And we also have another project that has to do with the possibility of implementing a new phone system for the county. So, as you can see, it can be an administrative challenge from time to time. So I'm working very hard at that, and so is my department, on being able to keep all of these things moving forward down the football field, one step at a time. I wish they would be able to go faster, but sometimes there's strong legal reasons to slow down, which we're perfectly in favor of. I've got a few more contracts to submit to the county. Let this thing turned off, which I've had my numbers on there.
Rob, and as far as I recall, in the budget talks, the new phone system wasn't funded.
I think it was going to be an item that the PBA was going to discuss.
I haven't seen it appear on PBA's agenda.
No, it hasn't been discussed yet.
It hasn't been discussed, but I know that it's an important item, and we presented it in our budget this year as a capital project.
Right.
So, but we spent a lot of work on coming up with that cost. It was a little bit more straightforward than this Aegis project, which is anything but straightforward. And so we were able to gather a cost estimate for the county and present that as a capital project for the board's consideration. So that's something that took us some time, and another thing that we've been engaged in. I have about 5 more contracts to submit, approximately. I want to make sure I get this computer up so I get my numbers exactly right, because I have a lot of things going on. Let me get this thing going here. Excuse me. Here we go. The IT guy is having some IT problems here, so give me a second.
Do you know somebody that can fix that?
I do. My screen locked up. I think it's in security mode in my keyboard.
1529 helped us.
Very good. So we have about we have 2 items on the agenda, 2 or 3 items for next week, and then we've got about 5 more items to submit with our contracts. Most of them are renewals from last year, including our Cox contract. So we've been submitting those regularly. We plan to have all those items done here in the next 2 weeks. So we've been working really hard at that contractually. Also, I'm going to be here hopefully this week. I'll be able to meet with Mr. Matthews in HR on advertising for a programmer position, a programmer position. As you can see, we've got a lot of challenges in the future as far as my development department and applications group. So the budget board was kind enough to approve a new position for that, and I need to meet with Mr. Matthews on advertising for that position and beginning that hiring process, and I think that's something that needs to happen. Another thing that was on the agenda previously was some questions about Kronos and Juvenile. I've got a meeting in the sheriff's office as timekeeping program, and we have a meeting next week with Kronos. They're coming in town, and I'm facilitating a meeting with the juvenile department to talk to them about possibly moving to that model. I'm going to discuss it with Ms. Overstreet, but that appointment's happening next week, and I've been trying to catch up with Ms. Overstreet, and we talked today here in this meeting. That's something else that's coming down the pipe. There's also an agenda item coming up that will be submitted possibly on next week's agenda, but this board should anticipate it, and it is the reduction of our total cost in Munis by eliminating some of the modules that we're not using right now. And so there's going to be a recommendation to this board that we no longer pay for these modules that are not being used, that were in the original contract. And so that's something that will be forthcoming. And then also the actual Tyler contract as a whole. So you'll have the opportunity to vote on these modules, whether or not we keep them or not. I met with our project team that I meet with regularly concerning the Munis, and it's unanimous that we don't need these modules. So now it'll be at the board's pleasure to decide whether or not we're not going to renew those in the next year. So you should be anticipating that item for discussion in the next few weeks, if not next week.
May I? With regard to those modules, I appreciate you identifying those. Can you also, when you bring what those are, outline what plans would be necessary, if any, as an alternative, and what cost?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll be prepared to discuss that with the items as they come up. I don't think that there'll be a need for replacement per se, but it's something that we'll consider for because of your request.
Well, or if you anticipate Civic Plus picking up some of that, just kind of, we bought it for a reason, I guess.
Yes.
And so
the benefits.
But you can tell us.
Sure. One of the things that aren't on there as for elimination is the benefits module, which we're currently using, and the application program that allows people to online to apply with as a new employee. So neither of those are going to be considered in the upcoming request. Those are modules that aren't on there because it's still up for debate. County clerk is looking at the benefits module again in a new way, based on a work group that we attended in Tulsa. So Matt Hutchinson and Aaron Spitzer and Augie and I and another group, several others, traveled to a work group in Tulsa, which includes everyone in Oklahoma that uses Munis. And we were presented the module again, and their light bulbs went off and says, well, that's wonderful. We didn't realize it did all these things, and we might end up using it in the end anyways. So that item, both of those things as it pertains to those modules aren't part of the modules that we're asking to be canceled, just for your information.
Thank you.
Because they're still being considered.
Have any questions?
Oh, yeah. Perhaps going back to item 13, and I think it was Mr. Buchanan that asked you about what staffing and what model you might use, and you mentioned contracting, temporary help, et cetera. I think it might be useful for you to begin to put together a plan to be able to present to either BET or the board, and not wait. The more we know up front about potential costs, the better it is.
Agreed. My hope was, when it came to additional staffing, just to make this board aware, was that based on my conversations with Captain Basin and with the folks from OSBI who manage this, the District Attorney's Council has been managing these grants, that some additional funding may be available for staffing. And I've had conversations with the OSBI about this and the actual writing of the grant. And so my idea is not to ask for the money in my budget, but if grant money came along, then it would be appropriate for me to maybe bring some temporary staff in, especially if the grant is written for that purpose.
Right, and you mentioned that in that project scope, a project manager, but just so we have an idea of what we're talking about.
Got it.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
A motion to receive on item 10.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Okay. Back to item number 6. Receive a report from Stacy from the VOCC Engineering Department. Hey, Stacy.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
All right. What I have this week of interest to you may be the jail kitchen HVAC system. We are doing pre-bid this afternoon. We'll be opening bids in a few weeks. Hopefully we get some good bids, and that project will commence and last probably till late fall. The jail roof is under construction right now. We're about approaching 50% complete.
The lower roof?
The lower roof.
Okay.
So that could complete in early fall. I bring this to your attention because I'm guessing Mr. Matthews will bring up some issues about some worker comp claims when he comes up here. So, answering in advance. All other projects, nothing really to report to you today. They're moving along. But we'll answer any questions.
I have one. Several months ago, I think you said the city was gonna put some kind of barriers as far as the crosswalk between the annex and the parking. Have you got any updates or anything on that?
Yes, I talked to the city engineer just the other day, and he said he had them on order, and he was planning on putting up some signs. They're not lights, but they're
Just signs?
just signs, something like you'd see over on Broadway.
Okay.
Yes. So he's still committed to that. He just doesn't have, hasn't received them.
How about the lights? You know, all the noise that we've endured now for weeks, you know, with them putting the lights up, the exterior lights. Is that done?
No, I don't think it's done yet.
I think it's close. I think it's only got a couple over here.
We do have another project that we're bidding out. It's advertised right now, to do the ceiling of the building, and that contractor will actually tuck in the extra cords and stuff that you see on those lights. So I don't think we'll be finished until that's finished.
Any questions, Joe?
Motion to receive.
Second. I'm sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you, Stacy. Tyler, do you have something to report?
No, I don't. Move to receive the report.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do I have a second?
Motion to send greetings and salutations to Tyler.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion carried. I take it you have something to report, Mr. Matthews?
Good afternoon.
Can you hear me, Dan?
What?
Can you hear me?
I can. Didn't have anything to report, but I will, since Stacy brought it up, we do continue to receive work comp claims from the jail regarding mold issues. I think we're up to 14 at this point.
And if it's appropriate, you are going to meet with outside counsel to discuss some of this?
Meeting Friday with our work comp attorney and our third-party administrator.
Okay.
And
any questions?
Kind of to follow up on that, not us, but our bosses are in the process of addressing these issues as the HVAC and other things that we've done at the jail. So we're in the process of working to address those issues. The county is.
Right. The problem's been identified and it's being rectified.
Yes.
Anything else, Dan?
Not from me unless you have questions.
Motion to receive.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Dan. Motion carries. How are you, Christy? We're on item number 9.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I am well. What we are working on right now is the community support grants process coming around again, and so we'll be sending out drafts of the RFP document to your offices so that you can review it, and just in the event that you might have anything that you want to add or change, and then we'll be starting on that process very soon.
Congratulations to your grandson.
Thank you.
What are we congratulating on? But congratulations.
He's the new state champion in trap.
Trap
Oh.
State. He went to the state shoot. I believe he's in the junior division.
No,
Oh,
total,
really?
all over. Yeah.
Okay, that's
All
even
ages.
better.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
Do you know what he shot?
98.
There's 100 targets. That means he missed 2.
Wow.
What yard line is he shooting from?
18.
Okay, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
It really
yeah,
is.
He's very excited. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to receive. And congrats.
Second. Sorry. I'm asleep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you, Christy. Mr. Monroe, I'm glad you could join us today, Keith.
needed to be at least 2 or 3 weeks of things to talk about at once, and I'm sure you have plenty of questions for me. Let me begin by saying we continue with the workforce that we have to provide A-B work, electrical, mechanical, communications, building and grounds, janitorial, support services, and contractor oversight for the county buildings and also the buildings for the Public Building Authority. Issues that we have now are elevator delays. We experience those.
Where are these delays at?
They're everywhere.
Okay.
They're everywhere, but most pronounced in the courthouse. I've asked Kone what we could do to improve the timeline on delivery, and they came back with what they said is called a traffic study, which study gives me a little heartburn, but they will do this for us and determine whether or not the timelines for door closures and the speed at which cars travel can be improved in order to keep people from having to wait. We've had congestions in both buildings, and certainly with everything going on the 9th floor and expected occupancies there, that could be an issue. So we're doing what we can to see whether or not we can improve that.
In the 9th floor after hours, though?
Well, the 9th floor, once it's occupied.
Okay, right.
You know, that's going to add additional people traveling using those elevators. I met just a little while ago with the district attorney's offices regarding build out of what they expected to have in place to serve the witness center, and it only I think exacerbates the traffic if we don't accomplish something there with the elevator. So we're working on that score.
But as long as these traffic studies are done during jury weeks, it'd be helpful, I think.
Certainly when there's most traffic here.
That's when we see usually most of the delays, I would think.
I think they'll use mechanical devices to determine when the cars run, how long the cars are in operation, how long the doors stay open at each stop. That's the beginning. But they'll be here to see, and they've got technicians that do see when the elevators require repair, the kind of traffic and congestion that we suffer.
Well, and the brakes on that elevator from the concourse are making such loud noises when that thing tries to stop as it's going up, and it's scaring people. You realize that?
I've heard that, yes. It's actually a hydraulic elevator, and the noises that you hear are bubbles in the hydraulic lines, and we've asked Kone to remedy that. They've had to do so a number of times.
Well, I think they've been asked 2 weeks ago. Is that correct?
2 weeks ago and many times previously.
Right. And nothing's been done.
I don't know if anything's done in the last 2 weeks, but they've addressed that elevator issue previously successfully.
Yes.
I'll put calls into them and make sure that it's done.
It's horrid. I'm a frequent user.
Maybe this is a Dan question, but where are we at in terms of replacement and repair associated with the flood, specifically the public defender's area, which was significantly impacted, the carpet, et cetera, our carpet, I think the court clerk, I think most of that ceiling's been replaced down there. They had some ceiling tiles that were out, et cetera. So where are we at in that, and couple that onto the elevator conversation as well? So
we've got a painting contractor and a trim carpenter engaged to begin to address those issues. District 1's offices certainly, and if you look at the elevator lobbies 1 through 5, all of those areas need to be addressed. The initial report that came to us showed no really signs of water or any invasive problems where we would have to remove drywall, insulation, those kinds of things. Carpeting was the same way. Some of those areas that were damaged, though, the carpeting is yet to be replaced. The elevators, we got a number back from Kone that seems to be agreeable with our insurance carrier there was some batting back and forth of numbers as to what was correct, what amount of service or repair needed to take place, whether Kone was trying to bill us for items that would ordinarily be covered under their contract. And so I think our insurance carrier did a good job of sifting through those things. Kone is ready to begin that, and I think the number is stable and agreeable to everyone.
Okay, so we might not, back to the carpeting issue and the associated smell. We might not see carpet replacement, but it's fair to say that at some point we'll see carpet cleaning?
Carpeting has been cleaned, and but if it continues to be a problem, we'll replace it for sure, and I don't think our insurance carrier will have any issues.
Okay, because those folks in the PD's office back there, they were swimming, and they're not the only one. But
I know that entire east side of the building. Okay. I'm glad you bring up the word smell. If we can go there, we've got associated with different projects in both the courthouse and the annex, problems with sewer smells, and particularly this time of year when we have those kinds of smells that find their way through the buildings. Construction on the first floor of this building results in smells that are particularly bad on Monday mornings when there hasn't been any water running through the systems. Those smells will continue until the construction work is complete. And I don't think we'll have any problems there in this building, but we'll have to suffer that for some time. In the courthouse, first floor men's bathroom, we have some plumbing issues that have resulted in smells, terrible smells there, that have required us to disassemble part of the bathroom. There's a crumbling vent line, and also some fixtures that need to be replaced, and we've got a contractor on site today doing those things.
That's a breath of fresh air.
I'm sorry?
It's a breath of fresh air.
Thank you. Let me see, what else? We're preparing the event room at 4201 Lincoln. I'm having my mail sent to that address. It should be finished this week. Thank you. Should be finished this week and ready for the treasurer's resale the second week in June. He intends to use that space for his
July?
June, I believe.
Are we not? Oh, next week.
Second week in June. Yeah, 2 weeks. Yeah, third week in June, something like that.
Oh, okay.
We'll be finished ahead of time. Okay. Believe it or not, we don't say that very often, but we'll be finished out there, and that space will be available for him to use. We've met with his staff. They've done a dry run with the audio visual. The screen goes up and down. His computer works with the system, and we're coordinated, and I think that'll take place without a hitch. What else here? Oh, during the meeting, I got a telephone call. We rely on Department of Correction inmates, and it was just revealed to us that our annual inmate cost, we use these guys for labor and every kind of thing, will go from approximately $2,700 to nearly $15,000 annually. I think this is the state's attempt to close their budget hole using Department of Corrections, maybe.
Well, they're raising their rates. They called yesterday our office in regards to inmate labor with our road crews, and they said we're raising the rates.
We depend on them. I know they cause us problems at times, certainly, but we depend on them for a lot of the back work that is required here in every discipline, with the exception maybe certainly of the AV work. That will affect us to some degree.
So you're going to reduce the force?
I don't know how we can. I mean, we're taking care of lawn care, in multiple places. That's where they really are helpful. Also, when it comes to moving, judges' complete offices or, taking carpet, when we replace carpet, we use those guys to help with furniture removal and installation. I don't see how we can do without them.
So you've got money in the budget for it, you believe?
I don't believe, I know we haven't, budgeted for this sum of money. If we've got to cut something else, we'll look hard and see what we need to do, but we can't do without this level of service.
You could possibly ask for money in the supplement.
Sure.
Now, the most important thing, those lights outside,
Which ones?
those fancy ones that we just,
Around the building?
yeah.
Yes.
Do they do colors?
Yes, and I was going to suggest perhaps we pick a shade of each mood that the board might have so that we could do a display.
Because you guys, I mean, you know my fervent love for all things University of Oklahoma to the detriment of all things other colors. Yeah.
Does the softball team
There
have
happens
a
to be
particular favorite?
well, they've won 4 national championships in 52 days.
That's got-
Maybe
that's got to be
Steve was
gold,
second.
a gold color.
Maybe we could get a red and
Well,
white
I-
out there.
Red-
I don't know.
red and white.
Probably a board decision.
Really, I'll talk to the contractor and
What's he
they've got the software for the thunder lights.
I don't believe the software is here yet.
Okay.
But the light fixtures themselves are installed,
Right.
and, you know, if you've seen some of the clever photographs that have been taken late at night when it's rained, like perhaps a Cadillac commercial, they look really good.
So we can't celebrate with red and white right now because we don't have the software.
I don't think we have the software, but I'm gonna ask that.
When you get it, can we use it?
Who wants to switch? Is that a board decision, or can we act independently?
I think we'll discuss that later.
Okay. Any other questions for me?
You guys got anything? Is there a motion to receive his report?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Item 14, do we have any new business? Seeing none, do we have any citizens that would wish to participate? Seeing none. Joe, do you have any comments?
Thanks for coming, y'all.
Richard? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.